Welcome to the first ever virtual New State Judging Director Workshop. You are part of history today as you join us in this series of videos that are designed to help you make the transition to be a successful SJD. You may have noticed I'm wearing a hat. As a new SJD, you're going to be wearing many hats, and that's how I've organized my talk today. Basically, I'm going to be putting on different hats to emphasize and highlight the different roles that you will play. Now, I think this one is the cutest hat of all of them, so you can look forward to some of the others, but this one I think is particularly attractive. So this hat is called a fascinator, and it's kind of the social hat. So I'm using it as a sign of the welcoming part of our presentation today. So the fascinator was named that because when it was originally designed, it had a clip underneath the hat that attached it very firmly to your head. And actually it still has a clasp today. But the fascinator made the hat be very well grounded. So that's our hope for you today, is that we hope that as you leave this workshop, you will be, first of all, fascinated with your new job as the State Judging Director, but also that you will be very well grounded. To get started, I thought I would tell you a little bit about the structure of our National Governing Board. Basically, we have 4 executive board members, and that includes the president, the vice president, the secretary, and the director of finance. In addition, we have 8 regional judging directors representing each of our 8 regions, and we have 5 at-large directors. These directors cover very important topics for us, such as our collegiate national assigning, our educational activities, our website, our library, and of course our National Judges Cup. In addition to the directors, we also have several committees, and the committees include the Constitution Committee, the Education Committee, the Site Committee, Finance Committee, the Helping Hands Committee, the Awards Committee, and the Professional Responsibility Committee. We also have several ad hoc committees, and these committees are designed to address a particular topic for one time only, and then those committees move on. But you'll be learning about all of our committees and their many accomplishments when you can attend the full State Judging Director Zoom meeting that we'll be having later on. The National Governing Board meets 2 times a year. We meet in the summer every year, and then we also meet in January right before the National Judges Cup. At the summer meeting, we also host a meeting for all of the state judging directors, and you would definitely not want to miss this meeting. It's a great place for you to learn about all the new initiatives that we're doing in our organization, get your questions answered, but most importantly, to meet other state judging directors and to be able to exchange ideas so that you can be a more effective state judging director for your state. Those meetings are usually held the weekend after the July 4th weekend, so the full week after the July 4th time period. So you can go ahead and mark those dates on your calendar for the next few years so that you'll be sure to be available to attend our meetings. As you consider your SJD duties, it'll be helpful if you remember to relate everything you do to the mission of our organization. So the mission of the National Association of Women's Gymnastics Judges is to provide professional development for our members and to support and promote women's gymnastics in the United States. As you think about your contributions to your state, be sure and ask yourself how every event and activity that you're thinking about is actually related to the mission of our organization and how it will help enhance that mission in your own state. Think about that with every expenditure, with every activity, and with every event, and then plan accordingly. Speaking of mission, this brings us to our next hat. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, I'm back. I said that the red hat was probably the cutest for the day, So I think you can see now what I really mean. But now I'm wondering if you can figure out what it is that's significant about this particular hat. The clue's up here. My big goal here is to keep my head straight so that it won't fall off. So now that you've had a little time to think about it, what this hat represents is your vision. So in addition to supporting the mission of NAWGJ, we hope that you will develop a vision for how you can implement the mission of our organization in your state. My vision for our organization is that we will provide activities and support that will help all of our judges be competent, confident, and collegial professionals. Now, depending on where you're at, you may be in a state that's still developing a cadre of judges. So your vision might be something like, you hope to have enough judges to be able to support all of the needs that your state offers. Another state may want to focus on promoting leadership activities and leadership development for their members, or enhancing the collegial relationships among its members. Speaking of relationships, it's time for another hat change. Back soon. Relationship building is another important aspect of being a good SJD, and building relationships means being a good communicator. So you'll need to be all ears so you can be a good listener. You may have become an SJD because you already have some good ideas that you'd like to see implemented in your state. But be sure and listen to those in your board and to your members to find out if those activities can be enhanced or modified, or if this is the right time for implementing some of those. It's always helpful to get input and to get diverse opinions. Being a good listener can help you get good ideas from your board and from your members. It can also make your members feel that they are a valuable contributor to our organization and make them more interested in participating in the future. In addition, being a good listener can ward off some of the crises that might develop if, in fact, you didn't know that there was some kind of an issue brewing. So be sure and put on your good ears and listen carefully and then implement those plans that you've got in mind. This hat came with glasses. It's the wise old owl. So as you're developing your communication skills, you'll also learn that you'll need to develop a good deal of wisdom. So that's easy to say. How do you do that? Well, one way to do that in the area of communication is to be sure to listen to all sides of the story, gather information, consult with others, and then make your decision. But sometimes you may want to wait. It might be better if you delayed making a decision. So don't be afraid to say things like, I don't know the answer to that right now, but I'll get back to you. Or say, I may need to think about this for a few days, but I promise you I'll get back pretty soon. As you're developing your wisdom skills, be sure to weigh all sides of the story, develop the pros and the cons, analyze the information that you have available, consult with others if you have time, and then make the best decision that you can. And you know what? If you make a mistake, don't be afraid to say, I think we should have done that differently, and just learn from that mistake and move on. That's all part of being the wise old owl. Communication isn't just about listening. It's also about squawking and telling your story so that everybody knows the rationale for the decisions and the actions that you and your board have been taking. For example, if there's a decision that comes out that doesn't seem to make sense to some of your judges, it may be because they haven't been taught what the background is and the context for that decision. So think of communicating as teaching. It's hard for people to understand decisions sometimes if they don't know what the rationale was and why the decision was made. So you can help that along greatly by explaining to them why it is the decision was made, what's the intended outcome, and what are the factors that were considered when the decision was made. If you do that, it's more likely that they'll be willing to go along with that decision, or maybe even offer some ideas that would make it be better the next time around. So don't forget, you need to squawk and tell your story. What do you do when you do need to ask for advice or help with a situation? When you do need to ask for advice or help, be sure and follow proper protocol. So in our organization, we're really fairly flexible in terms of most things that we do. But when it comes to protocol, it's really important that you put on your hard hat and follow the protocol that is suggested. So for example, if judges have a question, they should direct that question to you so that you can forward it to your regional judging director. The regional judging director should then contact the appropriate official at NAWGJ or USA Gymnastics or the NCAA. They really should not be going, nor should you, directly to those organizations. You need to think about it from their perspective. There's many judges in the United States, and there's only a few people at each of those organizations to handle questions. So it really creates a heavy workload for them if they get individual questions from judges that really could be answered perhaps at a different level and not have to go to their level. The other thing that can happen is that sometimes a question can be asked in such a way that the answer that is given may not really be as accurate as it would be if all the information were known. So by providing all of the information to the individual who's going to answer that question, you can make sure that the answer is one that's going to hold up over time, and that the person who tried to answer it doesn't get embarrassed because they answered it with only half of the information that was actually provided to them. So one of the things you need to do is work with your judges and let them know about this chain of command, that they should always direct their questions to you as the state judging director, and then you contact your regional judging director, who will in turn, if he or she can't answer that, they'll go ahead and go to the appropriate official at the designated organization. Although it's important for you to follow the protocol, no matter what the question, it's particularly important that you follow that protocol when you're dealing with a complaint about a judge. Fortunately, you won't get many complaints about judges because most of our judges are very professional and really don't get themselves into situations that cause conflict. However, when you do get the occasional complaint, it's important that you follow the protocol that's outlined in our problem resolution process. And you'll find that on our website. But basically it says that a judge who is a member of NAWGJ shall report any knowledge she or he has of a violation of rules by any other judge or member to the state judging director. It's critical that you or your designee, if you have an ethics chair on your state governing board, be the point of contact for any complaints about judges. This is important because NAWGJ has developed a process that is designed to hear both sides of the story, the judge who's being complained about and the person who's complaining. And hopefully we can resolve it right at that level and don't have to go any further. However, if we do need to go further, we have a process established that will allow that process to be heard and to provide a fair and equitable treatment for the judge. Other organizations don't have that process in place for judges, so we want to be sure that those complaints come directly to you, and it's really up to you to let your judges know that that's what they should do. Although open communications is really important, there are some times when you should clam up. We expect confidentiality from state judging directors on all of the issues related to the problem resolution process. So this is a time when you really do need to clam up and keep that information to yourself. Just think about how you would feel if you were the subject of a complaint. You really wouldn't want other people knowing about that complaint, particularly if it was not founded. So regardless of whether or not there was some basis to the complaint or whether or not it was just a misunderstanding, be sure and keep these things confidential. And the other place where you're going to need to have confidentiality, it has to do with the outcomes and the processes of your board meetings. So you will ask all of your board members to sign confidentiality forms once a year, and you'll collect those forms and keep them on file. Now, what's the difference though? Obviously, you have to communicate the outcomes of your state governing board meetings, and you'll do that through minutes and through other forms of communication. That's really required, so that's not the issue in terms of confidentiality. The issue with confidentiality is what went on in that board meeting to come to that decision, to bring about that outcome. So if one of your board members leaves the board meeting and says things like, well, I didn't vote for it, but she did, and that was all they needed, the vote passed, and now we're stuck with this dumb rule. Well, that undermines the whole operations of the board, but more importantly, it makes board members less likely to want to discuss openly in your board meetings. And you don't want to do anything that will have a chilling effect on those discussions and conversations. So it's very important that who said what and who was on which side of the argument, those processes be kept confidential. The outcomes of your board meetings, absolutely. They need to be published either on your website, or if you don't have a website, then you need to get those minutes of your meetings out to your members in other ways. Although the items we just talked about need to be kept confidential, there are some areas in which transparency is the key. And that really has to do with your financial reports and budgeting activities. You will hear more about this when you listen to the video from our financial director. But for now, just know that it's really important to have transparency in your actions so that all of your members have confidence that their money is being spent appropriately. Basically, you have to think of it from their perspective. They're the ones who are out there usually earning money for your organization and doing the fundraising for you. So they want to know how it's being spent. If they don't think it's being spent properly, it's likely to lead to suspicion. And that suspicion could tarnish your reputation and could bring about some considerable dissonance within your organization. So the best thing to do to promote the credibility of your organization and of yourself is to have transparency. Many of our states have very successful Judges' Cups and other fundraisers, and then they use those funds to support the educational activities of our judges. It's particularly helpful in the years in which we have all the expenses associated with testing and recertification, and they save up those funds to help offset those expenses for judges. However, your bank account and your financial reports may end up looking like you are sitting on a lot of money. And your judges may come to think of you as the Christmas tree, the place to go to get presents. So it's very important for them to understand that we have a financial policy in place that allows you to save funds for expenditures such as I just described, but then also these expenditures need to be approved in advance and published in the board minutes. In addition, there are certain things that financial policy doesn't allow. Again, you'll learn more about that later in the financial video. So occasionally, you may end up feeling like the Grinch who stole Christmas rather than the person who had the Christmas tree. And that's because individuals look at our bank accounts and our budgets and balances and they think that we've got money and so we might as well go ahead and support this cause or another cause. There's many worthy causes out there, but we have a financial policy that emphasizes that all of our expenditures have to be mission related. So when you come in that situation, review the financial policy It helps to show the person the financial policy, explain to them why it is that we have limits to some of the expenditures that we can do. And unfortunately, you may feel like a Grinch, but for the most part, you're going to feel more like a Christmas tree because you'll have the opportunity to provide your judges with educational materials, perhaps membership opportunities, things that are really going to help them as they progress in their judging career. I've mentioned financial reports a few times and said that you'll learn more about that when you watch the financial video. But one thing I want to emphasize is when you submit your financial reports or any other reports that you are required to submit as an SJD, be sure to do them in a timely manner. So here's what happens. If you don't submit your report on time, two things happen. First of all, your RJD is going to have to nag you to get it, and we don't like to feel like we're nagging. So that puts the RJD in a very uncomfortable position. But secondly, it holds up her report. And that report is one in which all of the states have to be compiled into a singular report and submitted to one of our national officers. So when you don't get your report in on time, it means that the RJD probably won't get her report in on time, and neither will our national officers get the information they need in a timely manner. So it's really not very considerate to do that, because what you're doing is putting your stress, if you don't submit it on time, onto the RJD, and then that person has to rearrange her schedule so that she can actually have time to get her report in. So if there's one important point we want to make, when you have a deadline to meet, be sure and get your information in on time. One helpful tool to do that is to go to the SJD website, and then you basically there you'll find, I'm sure you've already found it actually, the calendar for the SJDs. Go ahead and enter those dates on your personal calendar and put them in a few days in advance or a week in advance so that you know that you've got to be working on that report and submitting it. And then when it's time to submit that report, you will have already had fair warning yourself to go ahead and to work on that report, and it increases the chances that you're going to get it in on time. We really appreciate timely submission of reports. R2D2, wonder what this means. Well, more and more NAWGJ is going to paperless submissions for all of our reports and activities. So we don't expect you to be technology wizards to be the SJD, but we do expect you to move towards paperless submissions and storage. So what do we mean by basic? Well, one very basic process is converting documents to PDF format. This allows your document to arrive in the same format that you intended it to be. Other applications that we hope that you'll be able to use are spreadsheets and maybe some of the banking applications, so that it'll help you to develop your financial report in a manner that's much easier than if you had to do that manually. We're also starting to use shared drives to send our documents to one another and also to store those documents. Many of us use Google Drive, but some are using Dropbox. So whichever one works for you, that's fine. But the important thing is that somebody besides you has access to all of your documents. And that's because when you do transition from your position to the next person, it's going to be very helpful if all of those documents are already in one place. And then all they have to do is get access to your share folder, and they've got all the information that they need. So many of our states and regions have moved to electronic meeting platforms in order to conduct some of their business. Now, normally, it's expected that you have at least one board meeting a year that's face-to-face, but other meetings can occur electronically using things like Zoom, or if you're not familiar with using those platforms, you can get used to using those, and that can help you conduct some of your business in a much more efficient way. A few states and regions have even gone out and they've been doing their clinics online. and we really commend them for their leadership and hope that we'll see other uses and creative opportunities for the use of some of these platforms. Now, if technology is not your thing, don't have any fears about that. There are people who can help you. First of all, most of the technologies we're talking about right now are pretty simple to use once you know what to do first, second, and third. So it's just a matter of having somebody help you learn first, second, and third. And you can do that by working with a friend who is technology savvy, or there's so many online tutorials now that are very short and quick and will help you get started. And the nice thing about those is you can go back and refer to them after you've been using it for a while and learn more sophisticated and helpful ways to use the platform that you're devising. Now it's time to focus on the best part of your job: recruiting new judges and educating your current judges. These are critical to our mission. Basically, you're going to get inquiries by email or phone calls from individuals who want to become a judge. Always respond enthusiastically. Don't just send them to the website. First, write a nice little note saying, "I'm so glad to learn of your interest in becoming a judge. Here's some resources." Send them to the link on the website, and then offer to respond to any questions they might have. You might even ask another judge in your state to help that person get through the process, because we know it can be somewhat intimidating to do all the things you have to do to become a judge. The other important and really gratifying part of your job is developing educational activities and clinics for your judges. You probably can take advantage of the experienced judges in your state to help provide leadership in this area. This will keep them engaged, number one, but it will also draw on their expertise and help other judges learn how to be as good as they have become as judges. And the other thing that you might want to consider is developing a mentorship program for new judges as they enter the system. So they've taken the test, and now what do? Most of them always ask that question: what do I do when I sit down and judge? I mean, I sit at the table, but what? I know the rules because I studied for the test and passed, but I don't know what to do next. So a mentorship program can really help the judges learn how to implement some of our professional behaviors, but also just to simply get the mechanics of judging down. So I'm pretty confident that a year from now, when we get a chance to talk with each other, you're going to say that this was one of the most exciting parts of your job and the most gratifying. The SJD position is a position of leadership. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best judge in the state or even the most experienced judge in the state, but it does mean that you are a role model. You are the judge. So be sure and model the behaviors that you would like to see in your judges. Review the canons and the rules that are on the SJD webpage and model those behaviors. In addition, be sure and wear the NAWGJ uniform and dress appropriately at meets. Remember that your behaviors are what they will see and think as appropriate. The other thing you can do in terms of being a good role model as a judge is to model positive conversations. If you walk into a conversation and find that it's full of gossip and negativity, redirect that conversation to a more positive or to a different topic so that judges don't begin to engage in those kinds of behaviors. So remember, you're it. You're the role model. I imagine you're feeling a little overwhelmed with all the hats that you'll be wearing, but just realize that that's part of the transition process, and it won't take long until these things come naturally to you. I'm willing to bet that in a year from now, when we see each other face to face, that you'll be able to put on the hat that's the biggest of them all, the one that shows that you are a star at being an SJD. Good luck and enjoy the rest of the new SJD workshop.